Shalom, shalom. Giving all praise, honor, and infinite glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rachach Wadash. Giving double honors unto the head apostles of Great Millstone, who do rule well and teach well with sound doctrine. Shalom unto the elders and the elder bishops of Great Millstone as well. Shalom, shalom. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings unto the hopeful elect, the men, women, and children, listening and learning from the servants of prophecy, Yahweh Bashim Yashai, and a hearty shalom to the sincere brethren doing the work in truth and sincerity spread across the four winds of the earth, giving diligence to make their calling and election sure. Shalom, shalom. So this lesson is going to go into a few pieces of information. Lord's will, this lesson is edifying, and we'll start out with naturalnews.com and of course the scriptures to tie it all together and make it make sense. So this is naturalnews.com. And this is from this morning, Monday, June 27th, 2022. And it reads, police forced to intervene to protect Arizona senators after they were trapped by pro-abortion mob. So while you have the Egyptians versus the Egyptians, in Babylon the Great over the right to murder children, which is against the scriptures, you actually have people in the other parts of the world who are doing this same thing, but they're taking it to the senators and the politicians and the crooked politicians, people who have taken bribes, so on and so forth, over the right to have access, to food and water, gas, essentials, supplies, places like Sri Lanka, Ecuador, Colombia, Cuba, Bolivia, and other parts of the world where people are really feeling the hurt. But what are they doing in Babylon the Great? Cunningly devised, fables, witchcraft, sorcery, the power of the media, which goes back to the word medium, Let's go into this article real quick. And this is all built off a lie. This woman was paid off to push this shit. Now, we're going to go into that a little bit later, but we'll go into this article a little bit. So it goes into the incident that happened, I believe, last night. And it reads, police forced to intervene to protect Arizona senators after they were trapped by pro-abortion mob. Let's get a quick precept. I was going to get it a little later, but hey, it wants to come out now. Leviticus 18:21. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy power. I am Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. And this is what the ancient Egyptians were doing. They were sacrificing their children to Molech. And, these Planned Parenthoods, these abortion clinics, all they are is modern altars on the left-hand side to sacrifice your child to Molech, who later became Baal Peor, who now is Baphomet. The same deity, sacrificing your child to Satan, man. Now, let's go into this a little bit. It says, a mob of pro-abortion protesters besieged the Arizona Senate building for a time Friday evening. So it happened over the weekend, following the announcement earlier in the day by the U.S. Supreme Court that a majority of justices, voted to overturn the notorious aborting ruling Roe versus Wade, legalizing the procedure across the country in 1973. So you have a lot of people in an uproar, over the right, to murder children, man. That shows you the type of sicko society that we live in. Now, this is all built off a lie. Let's go into this. So, Jane Roe, whose real name is Norma McCorvey, and this is all built off a lie. The story she told was a lie, and she got paid $500,000 to push this garbage. And after this happened, you've seen abortion clinics open up all around the country, murder stations for people to sacrifice their child to Molech. Let's go into this. So this came out a little while ago. I don't know the exact date. 2020, 2 years ago. And it reads, FX's Jane Roe deathbed confession reveals the abortion lie at the heart of the religious right, quote unquote. So the religious right worked to convince McCorvey that abortion was the great defining evil of our time. Then they used her story to push the same line on vulnerable Americans. And since this has happened, millions and millions and millions of babies have been killed at Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics, local, state, federal, so on and so forth, hospitals, so on and so forth. And it reads, let me see. Let's get right to the point. I'll read this first paragraph right here. So since it has already made the news, let's go ahead and spoil the film. Toward the end of FX's, aka Jane Roe, we learned that the anti-abortion activists used a pile of money and heavy doses of psychological manipulation, aka the media, the left hand's massive tool for psychohypnosis of the public to get them to do what they want them to do. So we learned that anti-abortion activists used a pile of money, about $500,000, we'll get to that a little later, and heavy doses of psychological manipulation, aka the media, to convert Norma McCorvey, the actual plaintiff in Roe versus Wade, in a trophy for their cause. The documentary makes for compelling review, especially in its final moments when McCorvey tells us, to paraphrase Bob Sager, they used her, she used them, and neither one cared. Let's go get a precept real quick. Let's get Isaiah 9 and 16. And it reads, I want to get the KJV Bible one. Yep. And it reads, for the leaders of this people cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed. And you have BLM doing the same thing, taking the bag and running. They're getting rich, living in $1 million homes, so on and so forth, and they're setting you up to be on the front lines to get gunned down, and that's all set up by the left anyway. George Soros funds BLM and Antifa, Now, if you go into how much she got paid to push this bullshit, and the elder brother, from Hawaii was going into this last night, so I figure I'd just, pick up where he left off, because, hey, that article was just speaking at me when I looked at it on naturalnews.com to put something together about it. So it says, when asked if the anti-abortion evangelical movement used her as a trophy in their case, she says, of course, I was the big fish. I think it was a mutual thing. I took their money and they took me out in the front of the cameras, aka using the powerful tool by the left hand, the media, which goes back to medium, which goes back to witchcraft, And they told me what to say. That's what I'd say. I'm a good actress. Of course, she added, I'm not acting now, because she was actually telling the truth. The documentary makers found that McCorvey, aka Jane Roe, had been paid at least $456,911 in worth of benevolent gifts by the anti-abortion groups she affiliated herself with. And that was in the 70s, in the 80s, That's a lot of money back then, man. So this is all built off a lie. Her story, what she was telling the cameras, she was getting paid to say it all, man. And that's what you guys are marching in the streets for. It's all built off a lie. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians real quick. This is 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. Slakia. Let's get 8 down to 11. And then shall that wicked be revealed. That's talking about Esau, the so-called white man, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, the prophets, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. This is the point right here. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Abortion clinics, do art thou wilt mentality, the Aleister Crowley mentality, and then, the whole Rainbow Coalition gang, the spirit of rebellion. 2 Thessalonians 2:10, and with all deceivableness, and with all deceivableness, Salakia, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they may be saved. And for this cause, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. And if you, look at these protests, you have a lot of Jake in the front line, a lot of so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, West Indian, Seminole Indian, men, women, and children. If you look at the Rainbow Gang protests, you also have Israelite foreigners, the Israelites who look like Edomites, because Israel spread amongst all nations, man. Now let's go into the law real quick. This is the book of Leviticus 18:21. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, which is what the ancient Egyptians were doing. And this carried out later on. We'll get into that a little later. Neither shalt thou profane the name of Yahweh, thy power. I'm going to start again from the top. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech. Neither shalt thou profane the name of thy power. I am Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. This is Deuteronomy 18:10. And it reads, there shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. This is talking about sacrificing their children, AKA the modern version of it, taking your woman down there to get that abortion, man. This is Deuteronomy 18:10. And it reads, there shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, witchcraft, sorceries, magites. And that's what these modern day physicians of no value are. If you go into that word doctor, it means to falsify, and where are they giving you? Look up the medical definition for quack. I don't want to get a strike on this lesson, but if you go to the medical definition of quack, you'll see what it is. It's somebody that uses, false methods of healing, man. Prescription drugs that end up getting you hooked, and the side effects end up being worse than the actual ailment that you're dealing with. And it's Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai that gives you that ailment, and it's Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai that can cure you. This is Deuteronomy 18:10. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter pass through the fire, or that useth divination, witchcraft, sorcery, or sorcerers, or an observer of times, a witch, or an enchanter or a witch. And that's what these modern day people in the lab coats are, man. Magi, sorcerers, physicians of no value. Job 13:4. Deuteronomy 18:11. Deuteronomy 18:11. Or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits. That's what Samuel, in the book of Samuel, that's who Saul went to go see, to summon up Samuel. Or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Deuteronomy 18:12. For all that do these things are an abomination to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. And because of these abominations, Yahweh thy power doth drive them out before thee. And Israel kept on doing this, man. So Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai put the curses on us, man. Which is another lesson, but hey, we want to be thorough. So let's go into Gehenna. So Gehenna, or also called Gehinnom, abode of the damned, Slakia. Let's get right to the point right here. Named in the New Testament in Greek from the Hebrew Gehinnom, which is not actual Hebrew, that's Yiddish. There's no O's in Hebrew. The Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, originally was a valley west and south of Jerusalem where children were burned as sacrifices to the Ammonite god Molech, who was also, a god of the Egyptians. The spelling is just different, I believe. Yep. You can see right here, it's Molech. And the Ammonites adapted this god. They just gave him a different name. And his name was later changed to Baal Peor. And now they call that same deity, Baphomet. The same deity. Leviticus 18:21 again. And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy power. I am Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Gehenna originally was a valley west and south of Jerusalem where children were burned as sacrifices to the Ammonite god Molech. This practice was carried out by the Israelites during the reigns of King Solomon in the 10th century BC and in King Manasseh in the 7th century BC, and continued into the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC. Gehenna was later made a garbage center to discourage reintroduction of such sacrifices. And that's what America, Babylon the Great, is going to be, and that's spiritual, that the last place, the last place this was done, as far as Israel doing it, was with the Babylonians. And that's what America is. It's modern day Babylon, as far as them using that place, Gehenna, to sacrifice their children unto Molech. And that's what those abortion clinics are, Planned Parenthood, so on and so forth. They're modern day altars on the left hand side for you to sacrifice your children unto Baal Peor, Molech, Baphomet. Who controls those places? Esau, man. The so-called white men, man. And it's all built off a lie. That bitch Norma McCorvey was a liar, man. And Esau's a liar. And what's this leading to? You have a term called civil unrest, civil disorder. In legal terms, civil unrest or civil disturbance means acts of violence detrimental to the public law or order. And you had something that they were promoting as far as a night of rage, so on and so forth. I'm forgetting the exact terminology. Let's just look it up. A night of rage. I think it's rampage. Whoa. Slakia. Yep. They were calling it the night of rampage or something like that, And what happened? People have been dying, 8-year-old suffers brain injury, grandmother dies. I don't think that's, it's like a night of rage. But they were advertising it. I think it's right here in this piece of information I was going to bring out. It's lucky. I'll just get it right here. Boom. Now, if you go into the news, yep, night of rage. So that's what it was called, the night of rage. And you had multiple people arrested in Eugene, people taking to the streets fucking shit up. And that's what it's going to lead to. As well as, on another topic, you have these people basically looking to make open carrying, legal in all 50 states, basically. The Supreme Court did an overruling on open carrying, So you're going to have a lot of people out here, with guns. Just as they're having people focus on those things, what are they doing? They're burning down your food supply, attacking the food supply, And this is beautiful. And call all Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. You know, this is all biblical prophecy, man. You know, uprisings, the love of many waxing cold, famines. This is all signs that we're in the end times. But back to civil unrest. 10 arrests made following downtown Eugene civil unrest, and that's in Oregon. Night of rage, civil unrest in downtown Eugene results in multi-agency response. Let's look up night of rage. Let's see what happened on that night. See if anybody got laid down. See if anybody got their melon cracked. So night of rage. Let me see. Death. But it's eventually going to lead to people out there taking to the streets, you know, not giving a fuck, man. You know? Now, let's go into what's happening in Ecuador. Because as people are doing this in the United States over the right to kill, you know, unborn babies, which is against the scriptures, you know, passing their seed through the fire to Molech, you have people in other countries like Sri Lanka, Ecuador, and other places around the world, they're actually taking to the streets and they're doing the same thing to the politicians, you know, rolling their cars down the river, setting them on fire, breaking into their homes, beating them up, you know, killing them. What are they doing it for? Because people are starving. And that's eventually going to happen in Babylon the Great. Let's get a quick precept real quick. 2nd Esdras. Let's read the header and we'll get the precept. Slack it. I'm trying to move this up. Come on, phone. This is AP News. And this came out literally 5 days ago. And it reads, Ecuador rejects indigenous protesters' dialogue conditions. Now, what do you have happening in Ecuador? Ecuador, Slovakia, I had the article pulled up. Ecuador, facing food and fuel shortages as country rocked by violent protests. You know, so as people are taking to the streets in Babylon the Great to march, you know, and get violent and get all in an uproar over the right to kill babies over a fucking lie, you know, Norma McCovey, she was paid off. And she was a liar. You know, she got paid $500,000 to push that garbage, and now you have Planned Parenthoods and abortion clinics all around the country. So all that's built off a lie. You know, in other places of the world, you have people actually taking to the streets and getting violent against their kings and princes with no regard because there's actually famine. You know, shit's hitting the fan over there. And that's soon to come to Babylon the Great. But what are they doing right now? You know, they're standing with their enchantments and the multitude of their sorceries, using their media, you know, to get the public in a daze to get them to think the way they want them to think, you know. Let's go into the scriptures real quick. Let's read this header. Let's read the first paragraph right here. And it reads, Quito, Ecuador. Violent protests by indigenous people following demands. Violent protests by indigenous people, the tribe of Asher, you know, Israelites. Violent protests by indigenous people demanding a variety of changes, including lower fuel prices, have paralyzed Ecuador's capital and other regions, but the government on Wednesday rejected their conditions for dialogue. Let's see where Ecuador is. I believe it's in Central America, so it may be the tribe of Zebulon. South America, so it is the tribe of Asher. Let me see where it is. Yep, that's the tribe of Asher. So it's right here. So these are Asherites, you know. Yep. Let's get the second paragraph. Quito, the capital, is experiencing food and fuel shortages after 10 days of demonstrations in which protesters at times have clashed with police. After officials rejected the conditions for negotiations, the United States government issued an advisory urging travelers to reconsider visiting the country due to civil unrest and crime. And that's soon to come to Babylon the Great. What's happening in Sri Lanka and Ecuador and other parts of the world where people are starving, in Russia and Ukraine, and also in, where's that at? St. Lucia, St. Lucia, it's like it, St. Lucia, in the islands out there, there was a drought on cash in the banks, and that's all to stir up people's, emotions and to bring in the MOTB, man. But you have to have chaos in the streets, so they can bring in, the troops, man, let's get this real quick. So let me see. Yep. Ecuador facing food and fuel shortages as country rocked by violent protests. So they're doing the same thing they're doing in Sri Lanka. They're doing it in Ecuador, man. Yep. Let's get that article real quick. Let's see what it says. Let's get a quick precept. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 14. And it reads, "Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and the destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall fight, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands," on many levels, as far as neighbor versus neighbor, class wars, race wars, and then eventually world wars, This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 15. And woe means destruction. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Destruction. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Swords in their hands. And what's the modern day version of the sword? The gun. 2nd Ezra 15 and 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And that's what you have happening, in Arizona. Police forced to intervene to protect Arizona senators after they were trapped by a pro-abortion mob. Just like you had the rush in the Capitol last year, January 6th, the so-called rush in the Capitol, Now, if you go into what's also happening in Ecuador, so Ecuador facing feuds, like it keeps on happening. I keep on reading fuel and food at the same time. Ecuador faces food and fuel shortages as country rocked by violent protests. But what's that causing? Feud, That's the spirit that word wants to come out. Feud, feud amongst, the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. And it reads violent protests. Let me see. It might be the same. It might be the same article. Let me see. Yep. But what's happening in Sri Lanka? They're out there going hard body, man. Sri Lanka. Let's look it up. Yep. So Sri Lanka suspends fuel sales for 2 weeks as economic crisis worsens. Wow. That's the next precept. This is 2nd Ezra 15 and 17. And it reads, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." And Ezra is the Greek way of saying the prophet Ezra, And that's coming to pass. With these rising gas prices, $6, $7, $8 a gallon in some parts of the country. By my house, it's $6.50. And if you want the good stuff, it's like $6.75, $6.80. Certain parts of LA, it's like $8.50. Those gas prices are only going to go up, man. And then what's going to happen? They're going to do the same thing that's happening out there in Sri Lanka. Suspending the sale of fuel, And that's when the tanks are going to come in, man. Call all Yahweh Shem Shai. And it reads, the next article from Sri Lanka crisis. U.S. officials arrive in Sri Lanka to address unprecedented economic crisis. Let's see. Pretty much that's it on that. Let's go into a few more precepts and wrap on up. It's the second Ezra 15 and 18. For because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. It says the mighty men shall tremble in the day of Jacob's trouble, And it's not going to just be Jacob's trouble, because the whole world is going to be put under duress, The heathen too, man. But Jake is going to be the main target, And I mean by Jake, I'm talking about you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian, and Seminole Indians. You Hebrew Israelites. And the Israelites who may look like the other nations, because you got Israelites who look like white people, Chinese people, Israelites who look like Samoans, so on and so forth. Because of the diaspora, the scattering of the Israelites. Get this incense burning. Salaki, I'm outside, so work with me. Let me keep it going. This is 2 Ezra 15 and 19, and it reads, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword. What's the modern day sword? The gun. And that's happening, in certain parts of the world where people are starving. Sri Lanka, Ecuador, Bolivia, Cuba, Colombia. We haven't heard anything from Colombia since, literally last year, and they were literally taking people's sons from their homes at 4 or 5 in the morning to make them join the NWO, and there was a crisis last year. Haven't heard anything since of what's happening. 2 Ezra 15 and 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And that's happening literally right here, Ecuador, man. Food and gas. Sri Lanka, food and gas. And what's it leading to? Civil unrest, which is set to hit Babylon the Great. Just give it some time. Now let's go into Matthew 24 and 12. And because iniquity shall abound, iniquity abounding as far as you have wickedness in its perfection in this kingdom, Let's get a quick precept. Let's get Proverbs. I want to say it's 29 and 1, I believe. Oh, it might be 2. Yeah, I think it's 2. Yep. Proverbs 29 and 2. And it reads, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And who's ruling? Esau, Edom, man. If you look into South America and who's actually running South America, it's conquistador babies, man. The babies of the Spaniards, the babies of the Portuguese, In the northern parts, it's the babies of the Frenchmen, For Jake who's out there speaking French, It's not the actual indigenous people of the land. Same with Central America, Those are conquistador babies, man. The babies of the Spaniards who went and occupied that land, who are actually in power. It's not actual indigenous people. And if they are, they're most likely they've sold out. Not most likely, they've sold out. All of those Central American presidents, Mexico included, are all conquistador babies, man. They're all tears. Let's go into Ecclesiastes 7:7. Speaking of tears and speaking of gifts. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad. Oppression is going to piss you off. And that's why those Central Americans and South Americans, they're taken to the streets, and other parts of the world, they've had enough. Ecclesiastes 7:7. Let's get Proverbs 29:2 once again. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And are people rejoicing? Why? Are people rejoicing? No. Better yet, why not? Because the wicked's in authority. And this won't be happening in our kingdom as far as, people taking to the streets, uproars, Nah, it won't be none of that, man. Ecclesiastes 7:7. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Now, if you go into this word gift, it's mata'aha, I believe. Mata'a, as an AW, Y backwards. Ha. Mata'aha, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong. Still working on the Hebrew, getting a little bit, more understanding of it day by day. But it goes into a present, specifically a sacrificial offering in a bad sense. And that's what you're given when you're going down to the abortion clinic, man. You're giving up a spiritual sacrifice on the left-handed side, a gift to Baal Peor, a gift to Baphomet, And where are they using those children for? Adrenochrome, They put it in your makeup products and so on and so forth, man. They drink the blood, These people are sick, man. These people who are really at the top, And that's who's funding the abortion clinics. But on another sense, you have a lot of our people, who are being led by the wicked elite, and you have the sellouts, among the crowd, who are taking a gift in the form of a bribe, and I believe that word is mata'aha, listen, Y backwards, ha, and correct me if I'm wrong, still learning the Hebrew, but I believe that's it. Isaiah 19:2. Let's wrap on up, get a few more precepts and wrap on up. So as you can see, this Roe versus Wade thing, it's all built on a lie. And you have what happening out of it? A few birds being killed with one stone, civil unrest, people at each other's throats, and then of course the excuse for Esau Edom to start bringing in militarized police forces, which you have happening over there in the nation's capital when this thing all happened, man. Eventually leading to martial law, man. At the same time, while people are distracted by that, he's destroying your food supply and telling you it's okay. Hit the streets, strap up, open carry, man. It's all good in the hood, man. The perfect recipe for disaster. Order out of chaos. This is Isaiah 19:2, and it reads, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians." Talking about the modern day Egyptians versus the Egyptians. If you look at these protests and these clashes, it's Edomites, man. What do you have right here? Esau. And who's that right here? It might be Jake, but it's Esau, man. Let's look at Roe versus Wade protests. Let's look at the first image that pops up. Images. Oh, what do you have? Eve. Isaiah 9:16, Also Isaiah 3:12. As for my people, children are their oppressors, women rule over them. And what's Eve marching for? The right to go down there and offer up that spiritual sacrifice on the left-hand side. That gift, to the elites, man. And to Baphomet, man. Molech, Baal Peor. The same deity, just given different names in different kingdoms. But it's mostly Edomites out there, man. And she has the baby strapped to her. We need to get out of here, man. This is Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, Edomites versus Edomites. And they shall fight every one against his brother and every one against his neighbor. And that's eventually going to happen when those same type of calamities that are happening in Sri Lanka, Bolivia, Ecuador, and other places of the world where they're getting hit hard, come to here, man. And they're burning down food processing plants, by the day and by the week, man. Literally about 100 food processing plants since last year have been burnt up. Since 2020, the fall of 2020, the fall going into the beginning of next year, man. 100 of them, man. All while people are mad at, the witchcraft and the enchantments and the sorcery that Esau Edom pushes out through his media, the new distraction, R. Kelly, the slap, who gives a fuck about any of that, man? We're focused on prophecy, man. Those are all distractions to keep you unrooted from what's really going on. And that's them taking away your rights, them coming down with great wrath and looking to wage war against you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and eventually to try to come after the prophets. And that's when the standard will be lifted. This is Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Let me finish this definition real quick. It goes into gifts. Yep, gift. A bribe. Ecclesiastes 7:7 again. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. And if you go into the law, it says you're not supposed to accept any gifts, because they destroy the minds of the wise, roughly paraphrasing, the words of the wise, bribes, Also, you're not supposed to give up any spiritual offerings on the left-hand side, because that's, idolatry, and that's what Esau Edom's looking to have you do, give sacrifices unto his God, Molech. And that's what these abortion clinics are, This is Matthew 12 and 25. And Lord's will, this lesson was edifying and informative. And, Slack, it feels a little long-winded, but hey, that's just my spirit. But Lord's will, you found this lesson edifying and informative. This is Matthew 12 and 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. The same way, that the old kingdoms were destroyed and brought no more into power except the Greeks and the Romans, this kingdom, America, Babylon the Great, is going to be destroyed. But it's not going to be able to be revived again, But also Gehenna. What happened to Gehenna? Gehenna was later made a garbage center to discourage a reintroduction into such sacrifices. The sacrifices of sacrificing your child unto Molech, And that's what these people are marching for the right to do. To sacrifice their child unto Molech, man. To kill their baby, man. Sick society that we live in, man. But it's coming to an end. And call all Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. This is Matthew 12 and 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Every city or house going into a family line or a nation of people, the house of Esau, Edom. They're divided, and it's only going to get more and more divided as Esau, Edom, the elite of Esau, Edom, start to put the hammer down, and that's coming real soon, man. But these are the beginning signs of, what's looking to be, the hammer being brought down. Because the distraction has to hit Babylon the Great before they just bring, the hammer down, man. They have to hit you with distraction after distraction after distraction and use what's that called? Bait and switch, the 3-card Molly trick, It's over here, it's over there, it's over here, it's over there. And while they're doing all that, they're, destroying the food supply, taking away your rights, signing executive order after executive order after executive order with 1,000 pages of, unrighteous decrees in there. And they're coming, they're coming, man. And that's a sign, and that's, Betty, that's what we need to happen, man. We need to come now. We need that standard to be lifted tomorrow, man, because we're trying to get up out of here. So once again, Lord's will, you found this lesson edifying. Let's read this precept one more time and then close on out. This is Matthew 12:25, and it reads, "And Yahushua knew their thoughts, and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand." Shall not stand. And that's going to be the future of Babylon the Great. Just like Gehenna was made into, a wasteland, a garbage pile, that's what Babylon the Great is going to be made, for the wickedness and the abominations that this place pushes. But a few things have to happen, and we're starting to see those signs. So, Lord's will, this is an edifying lesson and informative. And in closing, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and infinite glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak Wadash, giving double honors unto the head apostles of the great millstone, who do rule well and teach well with sound doctrine. Shalom unto the elders and the elder bishops of great millstone as well. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings unto the hopeful elect, the men, women, and children listening and learning from the servants and prophets Yahweh Bashem Yahshai, and a hearty shalom to the sincere brethren doing the work in truth and sincerity, spread across the four winds of the earth, giving diligence to make their calling and election sure. Shalom, shalom. And last but not least, a hearty shalom to the men of valor in the DTA camps. First camps I ever heard the truth from, Isaiah 62 verses 6 through 7. Ye that make mention of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahshai, keep not silence, and give him no rest day or night. To Jerusalem is a praise in the earth. So once again, Lord's will, you were edified. And until next time, next live stream, next lesson, next live premiere, next live camp, Shalom, DTA, Wa Abba Baba. Soon. Shalom.